Now, that's markedly ahead of the Americans. It's not 100 cents in the dollar, though, to be fair, 100 cents in the dollar is impossible. You can't make people spend. So could Australia's package have been better? Yes. Could America's package have been better? That's a very big yes, and that's a problem for the world.
So what you're saying is that Australia's stimulus package is a lot better than what's happened in the US, but not as good as it could have been.
If you look at the package that Australia just put through, two key problems. One, the handouts went to people on incomes too high. So individuals, and it was tested on individual income, not family income, individuals earning up to $100,000 can get it, and many of them will save it. Now you compare the handouts in the current round of stimulus from the Australian government versus the December round. More of the December round will end up being spent than the current round, basically because the December round went to poorer people on average. So problem number one, the handouts went up the income scale, presumably to chase the swinging voters and get the Daily Telegraph and Herald Sun vote, or at least support for a stimulus package of this kind. Second, lots of the spending went on for too long. Now, that comes down to more the construction, the infrastructure side of it, everything from the insulation in roofs to the stuff at primary school halls and libraries and the rest of it. A large share of that is happening after the middle of 2010. And for me, that's too late. Those are the two key things. Handouts went to people with too much money, and the infrastructure spending goes on too long.
In terms of the infrastructure spending, the government's plan obviously is to get as much money out there into the system as quickly as it can to prime the economy, but is there a concern that it might run up against capacity constraints, that it simply won't be able to spend this money on public housing, on schools, quickly enough?
Oh, for sure. There is one sector in Australia which is absolutely still straining to get stuff done, and that's the construction sector. Now, housing construction is slow at the moment, but engineering construction, still the roads and ports and mines and the big infrastructure stuff, very, very busy. And so too is commercial construction, building offices and hotels and retail shopping malls and the like. You look at the pipeline of work still to be done by the construction sector in Australia, it had never been bigger. And that's a problem because the clear consensus amongst economists, the best single thing you can do in a downturn is infrastructure spending. Construction spending tends to be very local, very good, pushes along demand in all sorts of ways. It does get spent, it doesn't get saved. But because Australia had the good luck, and it is good luck, to hit this slowdown with such momentum, it does mean that the sector that's best for stimulus is the sector that's least prepared or least ready to undertake the stimulus, because it still has this enormous head of steam. Now, construction will slow, and will slow markedly in Australia. You look at the US, the proportion of workers in the US who are in the construction sector has only just dropped back to the longer term average of 5%. In Australia, 9.5% of our workforce are in construction. Almost 1 in every 10 workers in Australia is in construction. Evidence of the strength of the boom here. Now that's great. It also can't last. It will fall away. Not in housing. Housing will strengthen in 6 months and especially thereafter. But engineering construction, commercial construction will weaken. The question for the government is, can it get its stimulus to the economy travelling through the sector that is still, sure it will slow, is still running as hard as it can. That makes it harder to get a good stimulus package in Australia than most other nations around the world.
As far as the jobs market is concerned, one of the messages that Access Economics, and indeed the government, has been pushing is that we need to try to put a floor under the employment market. Now, it's obvious that unemployment is going to rise. From your perspective, how much do you think unemployment will go up? And what do you think the impact of that is going to be, beyond the obvious, in terms of the actual jobless rate?
In the last two recessions in Australia, unemployment went to 11% and 10%. Our forecast that we initially settled on in early December 2008 was that sometime in the first half of 2010, unemployment would go to 7.5%. My fear is that it'll be worse than that. people in many ways don't understand the risks. The average Australian, sitting back, having lived through a lot of pain on interest rates and petrol prices, but knows and understands that interest rates are now a lot lower, and petrol prices are still high, but they're comfortably below where they were. The average Australian is still better off. They don't understand the size of the economic tsunami headed to our shore, the earthquake that was the breakdown of global banking markets, the wave, which is the slowdown in China. The combination heading towards our shores is very big, will hurt profits a lot, will hurt employment a lot, and will move unemployment up. And people say, well, if spending too much money is what got Australia, vulnerable and to this crisis in the first place, why do governments and the Reserve Bank want us to keep spending money? And they're quite right for the longer term. We had a boom, we had a beautiful boom, the best that I will live through. But we spent it. Families spent it, businesses spent it, governments spent it. That's a big risk. But I don't want to see a big pullback in spending by consumers, by businesses, or even by government in the short term. The reason why we need to keep spending in the short term is if we all start pulling back at the same time, sales fall more, profits fall more, and unemployment goes higher. And it's the last one that's the important one. Unemployment is a tragedy, not just for all the obvious reasons, but because once it goes up, it lingers. So the higher we let it get in the next 18 months, the harder it will be to ultimately get rid of it. So we need the medicine. We definitely need the medicine of higher savings. Australians need to change their savings habits, but they don't and shouldn't change them all at once. We do need governments and the Reserve Bank to keep us spending or encouraging us to keep us spending in the next little while. Otherwise, this pain will linger for longer.
So what you're saying is it's easy to push unemployment up quickly, very hard to get it down quickly. It's a long, slow, difficult task to achieve a reduction in the unemployment rate.
Recessions are the tragedies of my lifetime. These are the big mistakes. Now, often they involve bad luck. Even more often they involve bad policy. But once we're there, and we are there, there is no way Australia can avoid the depths of the downturn now sweeping across the world. Once they are, we know this is coming. It is worth trying to throw the kitchen sink at this to hold the increase in unemployment to as modest a level as we can.
What are the sectors in Australia's economy that you think will be hardest hit?
So you're already seeing some sectors hard hit. Retail and therefore wholesale has been in trouble for a while. Now the financial sector is in trouble, madly laying off people. Miners, massive increase in mining employment in recent years. And admittedly a small employer, but in relative terms, massive increase. Now a lot of those jobs are going. It will then start to spread. You will see construction getting hit, a big employer. You will see manufacturing getting hit. And again, both these things are starting to happen. It then spreads more widely through the economy. The lots of professions, the accountants, the lawyers, the architects, the rest of it, spin off the strength in the wider economy. They hurt as well. And that's the trouble. Once the pain becomes general, it really does spread through the entire economy.